Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is 5:30 p.m. and the live stream has commenced. You may begin your meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Good evening, Council, assembled SLT staff, and viewing public. I see we do indeed have quorum, so I call this public meeting under the Planning Act in session. And it's Monday, December 13th, 2021. As with all meetings at the town of Pelham, we begin with the reading of the land acknowledgement. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have some opening remarks. I would ask Ms. Wilford to please share her PowerPoint.
Oh, I'm sorry. After looking at the agenda, is there any comments? Not seen, Madam Deputy Clerk?
Absolutely. Public meeting under the Planning Act, Monday, December 13th, 2021. All Town of Pelham in-person public meetings have been canceled. Instead, the town is holding all meetings electronically via Zoom. Please note that no decisions have been made prior to this public meeting. The Planning Department will be providing a presentation regarding the subject applications. Participants are reminded, please ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you will be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you will be removed from the meeting. Participants will remain in the waiting room until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by council, your microphone will be muted and staff will turn off your camera. Public meeting under the Planning Act. Decorum. The public meeting under the Planning Act is a formal public hearing requiring decorum. This means that all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you'll be given an opportunity to address council at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Please note that comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will also not be tolerated. Please note that if decorum is lost, the meeting will be recessed and persons asked to leave. To allow for an efficient meeting, each member of the public will be given an opportunity to speak to council during the public portion of the meeting. Please note, after all members of the public have been given the opportunity to speak, the applicant or agent will have the opportunity to address the public comments and concerns at one time. Please note, all comments stated and received electronically form part of the public record and will be considered by planning staff when preparing their recommendation report for council's consideration. If you wish to receive a copy of the notices of decision, please contact the planner responsible for these applications in writing as soon as possible. Shannon Lorock, Senior Planner, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400, Vaughan Hill, Ontario, LOS 1EO, slorock@pelham.ca. This contact information can also be found on the Town of Pelham's website. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have an amendment put forth by Councillor Hildebrand that the agenda be amended to add item number 5.3.1. Through you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay. Any discussion by councillors on this amendment? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. I will start the vote with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Duncan.
Yes.
Thank you. That carries.
And Madam Deputy Clerk, I believe I made a mistake and didn't ask if there is any councillor that had, after viewing the agenda, if any councillor had a pecuniary interest or general nature thereof to declare. So I will ask that now. Councillor Kaur.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a conflict of interest for 4.1.1.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. This will be duly noted by the Deputy Clerk.
Yes, thank you. I have noted this.
Is there any other counselor with a conflict? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. And we will go back to the motion as amended. I have a motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand that the agenda for the December 13th, 2021 public meeting under the Planning Act special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted as amended. Through you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Any discussion on the amendment? Not seeing any, Madam Deputy Clerk?
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that brings us to item 4 on the agenda, and I will now read the notice requirements into the record. Town of Pelham application for draft plan of condominium, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, property east of Station Street and west of Meridian Way, Park Place North, file number 26T19-03-20, OP-AM-03-21, and AM-12-20. A draft plan of subdivision, official plan, and zoning bylaw amendments to permit the use of the property for one block of future development, one block for open space along the associated roadway, extension of Meridian Way. The Planning Act requires, under sections 34, 22, and 51, that council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the proposed amendments. This public meeting has been called to satisfy this requirement. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on November 22, 2021. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed draft plan of subdivision, official plan, and zoning bylaw amendments. In addition to providing information, we will also receive any comments which members of the offer. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the clerk in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is available on the town's website and will also be displayed on the last slide of staff's presentation today. If a person or a public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Town of Pelham to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Pelham before the bylaw is passed, the person or body is not entitled to appeal the decision. In closing, we stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendments, and therefore any comments received will be considered by council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have Senior Planner Shannon Larock in this meeting. Shannon, please feel free to share your presentation.
Hey, Ms. Luak, you have the floor.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yes?
Am I not supposed to be leaving now?
Madam Deputy Clerk?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Kaur, you may turn off your video if you'd like.
Yes, Councillor, you're exactly right.
And excuse me, now who's going to notify me for the section 5.1.1?
I would be happy to email you and notify you when to return.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Ms. Luak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The public meeting tonight is for applications submitted for a development known as Park Place North. The applications are for draft plan of subdivision, official plan, and zoning bylaw amendment applications. And as outlined a few minutes ago, this property is located east of Station Street, south of Highway 20, and west of Meridian Way. This property is directly north of parkland that's owned by the town, and also of Park Place South subdivision, which received conditional draft plan approval from council in the summer. The purpose of these applications the draft plan of subdivision itself will create one block for future development, one block for open space, and another block for the associated roadway, which will be an extension of Meridian Way. The official plan amendment will amend policy B1782DI by reducing the minimum parking requirement for seniors housing from 0.75 spaces per unit to half a space per unit. And the zoning bylaw amendment application will change the zoning of the land from agricultural to a site-specific residential multiple 2 and the East Fonthill environmental protection zones. This is the proposed draft plan of subdivision. Block 1 is the block that's reserved for future development. Block 2 is the portion that is part of the watercourse and will be receiving the environmental protection zoning to recognize that. And block 3 is a 0.3 reserve where there will be a future roadway connection. And you can see this is the extension of Meridian Way that is intended to connect to the future Norgate Way, which will then connect to Summersides Boulevard. Norgate Way was a road that received approval as part of the Park Place South subdivision draft plan approval. The applicant has provided 3 different development concepts for this property for block 1. The first development concept is for 2 apartment dwellings and 1 residential retirement home. The residential retirement home is proposed to be 5 stories and 140 units. And the apartment buildings, one is proposed to be 5 stories with 72 units, and the second is proposed to be 4 stories with 52 units. The second development concept shows 2 apartment dwellings and 58 block townhouse dwellings. This concept shows the block townhouse dwellings being developed on the western portion of the property. And the 2 apartment dwellings, they're the same as on the first concept in terms of a 5-story and a 4-story with 72 and 52 units respectively. And the third development concept shows the residential retirement home and 43 block townhouse dwellings. This concept, of course, shows the block townhouse dwellings on the eastern portion of the property and the residential retirement home, the same as on the first concept with 5 stories and 140 units. In terms of the planning framework for this application or for these applications, this property is considered to be within a settlement area in the provincial, according to the provincial policy statement. And settlement areas are, of course, where most growth and development is to be directed. And the property is considered a designated greenfield area in the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And designated greenfield areas, of course, are supposed to be developed as contributing to complete communities and at a density of 50 persons and jobs per hectare. The Niagara Region official plan considers this property to be within the urban area boundary and its designated greenfield area. This area is intended to accommodate a range of different land uses. Grid street patterns are encouraged, transit supportive development, also development that can be serviced in accordance with approved master plans, approved servicing master plans. And similar to the growth plan, the regional official plan sets a target of 50 persons and jobs per hectare in designated greenfield areas. The town's official plan considers this property to be within the commercial/employment center, and it's designated East Fonthill Urban Highway Commercial. This designation permits a wide range of uses: commercial offices, retail stores, tourist accommodations, townhouses, apartment buildings, seniors housing, a wide variety of uses. The minimum density is the same here in our official plan as it is in the regional policy plan and also in the growth plan at 50 jobs and persons per hectare. And our official plan goes a little bit further and says that residential development density should range from a minimum of 35 units per hectare here up to 160 units per net hectare. And the official plan also stipulates some parking guidance which is the purpose of the official plan amendment in this case. And the only policy that doesn't comply is that the seniors housing in our official plan requires a minimum of 0.75 spaces per unit. The town zoning bylaw zones the property as agricultural, and the requested zoning bylaw amendment would change the zoning of the property to residential multiple 2, which would permit block townhouse dwellings, apartment dwellings, nursing homes, and senior citizens homes. It would also change the zoning of the small piece of the watercourse to East Fonthill Environmental Protection. This would limit the use to conservation uses, flood and erosion control works, and trails for cyclists and pedestrians, including bridges. There are a number of site-specific regulations that are being requested here. One is the addition of a definition for pedestrian bridge or canopy. We don't currently define that in our zoning bylaw. That would mean a structure connected to 2 buildings for use by pedestrians to pass between 2 buildings. There is also a request to change the parking requirements to 1.25 spaces per apartment dwelling unit, and of course the half space per nursing home or senior citizens house unit. There's a request to allow for encroachments of covered and uncovered porches and patios into the front and exterior side yards, as well as the rear yard, up to 2 meters. And for low uncovered porches and decks, they could go up to 1.2 meters from the rear and side lot lines. There are some permitted uses that are being requested that aren't typically found in RM2, and in this case, it's block townhouses, nursing homes, and senior citizens apartment houses. So those would be permitted uses. The applicant is seeking some flexibility here so that there would be the ability to develop the property in accordance with any of the 3 concept plans at this point in time. The maximum density would be changing to 20 to 60 units per hectare. The maximum front yard will be 3 meters to the front face of the building and 6 meters to a garage to allow for parking of a vehicle within the driveway. The minimum interior side yard will be 1.2 meters and 6 meters where the rear of the building faces. And then the minimum side yard where the building faces an internal road will be 2 meters. The minimum rear yard will be 6 meters. And finally, there's some changes to the setbacks between townhouse units. And the only one that's changing here from the standard requirement is the setback between sides of townhouse units. That will be reduced to 3 meters. There is a proposal to delete the requirement for planting strip and amenity area here. The planting strip requirement just isn't applicable on this property. Planting strips are typically required where the property abuts an R1 or R2 zone, and that isn't the case here. There is no R1 or R2 property adjacent to this one. An amenity area will be provided for the block townhouses. However, that will be provided per unit rather than all in one collective area. And that would be determined through future site plan approval application and draft plan of condominium. The regulations that are being requested for apartment dwellings would also apply to nursing homes and senior citizens apartment houses. They include a minimum lot area of 75 square meters per dwelling unit. Also a maximum density of 130 units per hectare. A minimum front yard of 4 meters to Meridian Way, and a minimum rear yard of 7 meters to the north lot line. And these are also outlined in the planning information report. I know it's a lot of information on this PowerPoint, so there is the ability to go and look at the report for more information. The minimum interior side yard would be 4.5 meters, except 0 meters where the enclosed or unenclosed pedestrian bridge is located. The minimum exterior side yard is half the height of the building, or 7 meters to Meridian Way, whichever is the greater. There's no changes being requested to standard minimum landscaped areas or building heights in this case. But again, for the apartments and seniors housing, there is the request to delete the minimum floor areas and the amenity space. And again, it's not that amenity space isn't being provided. It will be, it's just that will be determined how it's developed and where exactly it's located through those future applications. These applications were circulated to commenting agencies and town departments, and the following comments were received. The region offered no objections, subject to their draft plan conditions and the water course portion being placed in an appropriate environmental conservation zone. The Pelham Active Transportation Committee advised that the multi-use path that follows the watercourse from the Steve Bauer Trail opposite Kunda Park ends at the southwest corner of the Park Place North development. They've encouraged that this trail provides off-road access for pedestrians and cyclists to the Meridian Center and also the commercial area on Highway 20. And so they feel it's very important that this multi-use path continue through the Park Place North development to Highway 20 in the area of Sobeys and the LCBO, and that will provide access to the Steve Bauer Trail on the north side of Highway 20 in this location. Bell Canada, Canada Post, and Enbridge have all requested standard conditions of approval. Hydro One has offered no comments or concerns, and Public Works provided some technical comments about the preliminary functional servicing report and plans. No comments were received from any members of the public at this time. A number of technical reports were provided in support of these applications. They include a planning justification report, an urban design brief, a functional servicing report, and stage 1, 2, and 3 archaeological assessments. Digital copies of these reports are available by contacting me, and I will put my contact information on the final slide. And no decisions or recommendations are being made tonight. We're here to receive feedback and questions from the public and from council. And once all of that has been received and we've had an opportunity to review, planning staff will be preparing a recommendation report for council's decision at a later date. If anyone wishes to receive future notices regarding these applications, please contact me. You can contact me at extension 319 at Town Hall or by email slarock@pelham.ca. And I'm happy to answer any questions or comments that anyone may have following the meeting.
Hey, thank you for your presentation, Ms. LaRock. Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I do understand that the agent for this application, Mr. Kernahan, also has a brief presentation. Therefore, I would welcome Mr. Kernahan to please share his screen.
Okay, Mr. Kernahan, you have the floor.
Oh, my apologies. I don't see him in the meeting here. Ms. Wilford, there we go. Mr. Kernahan, you may be muted. We do not have audio on this end.
Good evening. Can council hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, we can.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. My name is Matt Kernahan, and I'm the planning manager at Upper Canada Consultants. I'm the agent representing Mountain View Homes, Niagara. I'm joined this evening by Michael Spaziani, who is the architect on this file. I'd just like to begin by thanking you for the opportunity to be here this evening. It's great to finally have the opportunity to present this exciting project to council. I'd also like to thank staff for their very thorough presentation and providing the planning context for the application. My intention this evening is not to duplicate staff's presentation, but rather just highlight some of the higher points of the project. Following my submissions, Mr. Spaziani will share some of the finer architectural details with council in his brief presentation. Slide shows the Park Place North development in its context. The 2.7 hectare site will be accessed by an extension of Meridian Way. Meridian Way currently terminates at the eastern end of the site and will be extended across the frontage to connect with the Park Place South development to the south. Development site is situated between the Sobeys and LCBO on its west, Food Basics and other commercial uses in the Fawn Hill Marketplace to the east. The site plan also contemplates connecting the development with both of these uses. Other commercial uses, including restaurants and a dry cleaner, are located to the north along Highway 20. Future town park, as Shannon mentioned, and existing engineered watercourse are located to the south. So Ms. LaRocque did a very thorough job at explaining the details of the conceptual site plan for the development, so I won't confuse things by going into them once again. However, I would just like to mention that the development vision for the Park Place North is to provide an age-in-place community for residents of East Fawn Hill. The intention is to provide a community for older residents that will allow a transition from the family home to a rental apartment and then eventually into an assisted living environment. This development provides seniors with a place to live that is convenient and in close walking proximity to shopping, parks, and community facilities. The rental apartments on the site will be provided with condominium-style amenities, and residents will be given the opportunity to share in the amenities of the retirement home that is located on the same site as them. So this slide provides a colored guide to the draft plan of subdivision, which has already been explained. As Shannon mentioned, the green area demonstrates the proposed open space area that will be used as a continuation of the existing watercourse block to the south. The brown area is where all of the seniors living residences and rental apartments will be provided on one lot. And of course, Meridian Way will be extended across the frontage of the residential block to connect with Park Place South to the south. As Ms. LaRocque detailed, this development is also subject to an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. The purpose of the official plan amendment is to deal with the amount of parking provided. The East Fawn Hill secondary plan currently requires 0.75 parking spaces per seniors residence. However, 0.5 spaces per unit is in excess to what is actually required here, where the average age of residents is anticipated to be over 85. Mountain View's building partner, Fram Slocker, has developed over 1,000 seniors residences in North America recently. These developments routinely include a 0.5 parking space per resident, as is proposed here, and they've experienced no issues with their developments. It should be noted that the rental apartments will be provided with 1.25 parking spaces per unit for a total of 260 parking spaces. This is the industry standard in Pelham and smaller municipalities in Ontario generally. It's obviously in the interest of the developer and builder to provide adequate parking for their future residents, but not to provide too much. 0.5 parking spaces per seniors unit will permit the developer to provide adequate parking while still providing ample landscaping. Providing additional parking would come at the cost of either reducing landscaping or incurring many dollars in addition to provide for underground parking. This additional cost would need to be passed on to the resident, which would reduce affordability. Obviously, neither reducing landscaping or affordability are desirable for the developer or the community, so they're requesting an amendment to permit the amount of parking they require. All of the uses proposed on Park Place North are permitted by the official plan. The seniors' residence, rental apartments, and their proposed 4- and 5-story height and their density are all permitted and encouraged by the existing town official plan policies that apply to these lands. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is simply to bring the zoning of the property into conformity with the official plan and to implement the development plan before you. As Shannon mentioned, some additional flexibility is also requested in the zoning to permit townhouses on the property in case the market does not demand the seniors' residences or apartments. Townhouses are also permitted in the in the relevant official plan designation. Just quickly, before I hand it over to Michael to speak on the architecture, I just wanted to touch again on the comments received on the application. As was mentioned, there have been no objections to this proposal from either the agencies or the public. Only standard conditions of approval have been requested from agencies, and no public comments have been received to date. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Spaziani to provide you with some information on the architecture of the plan.
Thank you, Matt, and good evening, Council. Let me share my screen, and I'll take you through a bit of my thinking on this site from a master planning perspective. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
That's always the question. There's usually someone who can't, so I'm glad.
No, I think you're good.
Thank you. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cough. And that's the beauty of virtual meetings. I don't have
That's right.
Seniors housing has been a real growth sector for my firm and for a lot of firms in Ontario for obvious reasons. We're getting old. I'm getting old. I don't know about you, but it's just it's a reality of the demographic. And when we started looking at this site, it seemed to me that Fonthill is growing well into a complete community. It's expanding from its more historic kind of functions and uses. It's got a growing, retail center here that has 2 grocery stores in play and many other shops. And from the perspective of a senior, being in the heart of a community where there is activity and other residents, family residents, is a very important idea. The idea is that it's a complete community. So when your parents or your grandparents have to enter a home because they can't stay in their current home, here's a place that's nearby and can support and cause the community to be more, in a sense, more complete in that regard. And that's what seniors want. They don't want to be put out to pasture, so to speak. They want to be in the heart of it. They enjoy seeing the activity. And in our experience in Ontario, and I'll take you through a number of the buildings that we've looked at and designed recently, but they all strive to be part of the community, important members of the community. They have buses that take the seniors out on junkets, but in this case, there could be walking tours around the neighborhood to go to various shops, to go to the community center. So there's a nice advantages that come with a site that is in the heart of a community and is a part of a growing community where many other uses are coming. I'm going to show you just a sampling of the buildings that we've done recently, and these are from various places. The top left is in Port Credit, and that's where my office is. I work out of the west end of the GTA, and I do have a lot of work in Hamilton. And this project is for Chartwell. This is in Oakville, and it's part of a community, a continuum of care community that has both a retirement home and this being a retirement home, not a long-term care home, but there is an existing long-term care facility on the site. So you get the synergy of both of those functions working together. The bottom left is a project in Clarkson in Port Craig, Mississauga. And it was developed by the Reichman Group that do work under the Signature brand of retirement homes. And this one is in Barrie. So this is a 4-story, and it's in terms of scale and character, it's most similar to what we're proposing here in Fonthill. It's a home of about 150 units. It includes floors that cater to people with physical disabilities. They call that assisted living. So there's specialist staff that allow people that are started as independent residents within the building. They can stay on when a spouse or a partner gets ill and needs some physical care. Buildings are also evolving to have what's called memory care. And unfortunately, that's very much a growth sector in the seniors area. So these buildings are now allowed to have elements of that memory care because there's a great backlog for retirement or for long-term care in Ontario. So retirement homes are adapting to accommodate some amount of memory care and assisted care. And that's a way to, that also impacts the need for cars. There's much fewer cars, obviously, needed by those that have physical disabilities or memory issues. So this home would have a component of those, would largely be mostly independent living. These are a couple of other projects. The one on the top, if you've been in Bronte, Ontario, down by the lake, this is a project we designed a few years back. It's an 8-story project, but right in the heart of Bronte, where lower-rise buildings are more typical. This is one in Scarborough, done for Chartwell. Chartwell's another client of ours, as well as the one on the right is Amica. These are big developers in the health field and the seniors field. And so we've been fortunate to have projects with them throughout much of Ontario. And because of their focus on seniors, they have great staff that look at ideas of wellness, ideas of interior design that's uplifting and bright. So this is the kind of spirit that you bring to these types of developments. Very desirable interiors that have full food services. Many of these homes trade on the basis of the quality of their menu and their food. And they have almost the entire ground floor of these facilities is amenity space. There's almost, for a home of this size, we might be looking at about 20,000 square feet of just purely amenities. These are lounges and pub areas and meeting rooms and craft rooms and dining rooms. So it's a big component of the development. For this particular site, the thinking on this site was to how do you put in a pleasant living environment within what is effectively a parking lot that's servicing the retail. Very important, the retail thrives because of its parking relationships. But when we look at how to design a building within that environment, we tend to look at pulling the buildings somewhat away from the most active areas of the site. And that's why we have these green areas that provide a kind of a buffer. These buildings don't front directly onto or face onto, or they're not aligned up at the edge of the property. They're meant to be focused on amenity spaces that are part of their development. The exception is the building B here, which is the apartment building, a 4-story apartment building. And in this case, this building does front and face onto the watercourse and the drainage area here and the new road that will be coming through, the Meridian Way extension. So it is a bit of an anchor that does provide a strong, let's call it, framing of this south edge of the property. And then one of the strategies we have for the seniors retirement home is that it's important that drop-off facilities by vehicle are very important. And you got to think about winter, you've got to think about rainy days, but typically we provide a large canopy and a drive-up to be able to pick up or drop off residents for the building. It also involves, most of these homes involve as I said, a van that can take up to 10 to 20 people out on junkets into the community. They can go out into wine territory, they can leave the site, and so you need, again, a drop-off facility that's more like a hotel. Excuse me. And that's one of the reasons, a very important reason that we've developed this courtyard in this area. This functions for that purpose, for visitors and for the drop-off functions. We have staff entrances, and we separate the staff entrances from the common area entrance. And those are for reasons of both of loading. There will be loading functions that happen here. Some of them are not pleasant. You can imagine that the death rates of homes is a fact of life. So we tend to isolate those functions away from the active front door. So there's a rationale for creating these kind of entry courtyard, an amenity courtyard, and a kind of service side to the building. Excuse me. That cause the building to function very well. Another reality is that we place the elevator core at the center of the building, and that means that the corridor walks are quite short from the main central area where you enter from. So we try to make it less institutional in that regard and have corridors that aren't excessively long. So those are some of the fundamental concepts here. Meridian Way, from an urban design point of view, it has a very mixed characteristic. It's got all of the servicing and back end of the Food Basics Plaza, the Pond Hill Marketplace. And similarly, the Sobeys has its loading functions here. So in that sense, that's a very mixed kind of frontage. It's not what I call a main street frontage, or one that you want to necessarily emulate in that regard. And it looks out onto very desirable lands to the south, the extension of the water course, and then the new developments that are coming in the South Park Place area are all positive attributes that you'd want to focus this building out onto. So this becomes a kind of front door to the community on the south side of the development. And the seniors is tucked away a bit, and I'll show you some views of various of these locations that explain a little bit of the concepts I've just explained. There's some views that are identified here. The first one is, this is a view from, say, the watercourse from the south. If you're looking on at Meridian Way and you're looking to the north, you would see the 4-story building B. This is an apartment building. So again, apartment building would have residents that would consider themselves independent, perhaps aging, perhaps planning for the next stage of life. So from the idea of continuum of care, they may choose to rent an apartment here for a while, but know that in 5 to 10 years, they may need to take up some of the facilities and services of the retirement home. And in some of the buildings that Fram and Slocker have done, they offer packages that you can live in this independent building, but you can plan meals or medical treatments, or even some special events that are happening in the retirement home. You can integrate these facilities. In the case of in Oakville, we actually provided an underground tunnel between the facilities, and that was to create some synergies with staff access and winter access for the visitors. This is just a very quick massing study of this building B, the apartment building, the 4-story apartment building. But it's looking at a contemporary design, but still uses elements of stone material and brick and a mix of colors to break down what is effectively a fairly long building. This building is about 72 meters long, about 230 feet. And so we look for ways to break down through vertical elements its color and its mass, so it doesn't read like a long monolithic building. If we walk along Meridian Way, and now we step to the west end of the building B, this is the 4-story building. Beyond here, you'll see the 5-story end of the beginning of the courtyard over here of the retirement home. So that's what this image starts to see. And what I've shown here is that the principal idea along Meridian Way is to have a very lush landscape. It's important to create a larger buffer here, so the landscapes can have at least double trees, and you can begin to really set the character of this sort of front door to the development as one that's very lush in landscape. It's an important marketing tool certainly for the residents that are for the future, but it's also a good response for this development to the community at large, the Meridian Way experience. Meridian Way will be a connector. As you heard, it will be a connector back to the Meridian Community Center, and also that bike trail. There's thoughts, and we've added a connection. I'll show you on the plan where we've added a connection through the site to respond to that idea of connecting with the Bower Trail. So these are important concepts. Now, view 4 is of that entry courtyard. That entry courtyard would have maybe 30 cars, something of that nature, mostly to handle peak demand for visitors, and for the drop-off and pickup, functions. Taxis will be important. I don't know if Uber is active yet in Pont Hill, but certainly taxi services are an important component and outreach of the seniors' home. So this is just a view of what that courtyard would look like. It's massing its scale, the buffer planting along the edge, and the beauty of having a long-term owner, such as Fram Sloker, who run these homes. This is not a condominium that changes hands and becomes the responsibility of the condo owners. These owners, the long-term owners of the retirement home, have a vested interest in making sure that all of this landscaping is maintained, is provided, and is a feature of their facility. It's a very important component of the concept. The other one that I mentioned was the courtyard at the back. If you recall, there was a green courtyard at the back of the retirement home. And this is a very important component, especially when memory care is in play. Security and control in a very gentle way, but we have to understand where all our residents are, and they can't be left to wander. You've heard stories about how seniors will wander off properties, but this is a very critical component of the open space concept. So as opposed to the parking side, which is the entry courtyard, which is paved but has edge planting, this is fully landscaped. There's no underground parking in this particular building, so these are all mature trees that can go before maturity. And it's a very important concept as part of the way these homes are operated, and to create a quality of experience that's really important to the residents. So I'll just end the presentation on that. I'll leave it on this slide, which is back to the master plan for the development. It does show the addition of this walkway, which could go to Sobeys. But what I heard today was that there's a need to get to the Bower Trail, which is, I believe, on this side of the north side of Highway 20. So there may be options to take that trail up this way or down this way. And these are all subject to some site plan detailing that we can engage with the town on. We've also created on this, these orange lines are also walkway lines, and this could also be taken as a connection point to the retail in this area, or a connection point to this retail. They show an interconnected condition here. All these are pathways that can be interconnected. The idea is that seniors do enjoy walking in a perimeter fashion around the site when they're allowed to. They don't have memory care issues. But generally that's happening through the front door, which has more of a control setting on it. So those are the key elements, and these were the views we're taking earlier. I showed you some head-on views, some angular views of these front buildings, a view 4 of the courtyard, and view 5 was of this back courtyard. This building C is a future building, but it would also have a kind of a very pleasant landscape courtyard on this end. So with that, I'll end my presentation and open it up to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Madam Deputy Clerk?
Yes, thank you. I would just ask the presenter to please end sharing screen.
Oh, how do I do that? There it is.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that brings us to the public portion of the meeting. We do not have any pre-registered members of the public for this application. Having said that, I will check the clerks@pelham.ca email address to see if anyone has emailed us while live streaming.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can confirm that it is 6:17 p.m. and we have not received any emails. Therefore, you can close the public portion of the meeting.
Madam Clerk.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Madam Clerk.
No
Your
problem.
audio is very poor.
Oh,
A lot of echo.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Weens.
I will try a different microphone. Is that better? Yes.
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, I apologize for that. I did confirm that it is 6:17 p.m. and we have not received any emails from the public. Therefore, you can close the public portion of the meeting and proceed to committee input.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Clerk. We will now go to committee input. Any councillors have questions, comments on the presentations you've heard? And I see Councillor Hahn.
Thank you. Through the mayor, my question is to the architect. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm just curious, so knowing what we've learned over the past couple of years with regards to the pandemics and the tragedies in long-term care homes, I'm just wondering, have there been any designs that you've taken into thought with regards to isolation of corridors and areas within the building with regards to we'll call it preventative measures? Just curious if that's been taken into consideration, please.
It has. Thank you, Councillor. It's a really important growing concern, and the response that we apply, and we're learning from our clients in this and their daily experiences. Well, one of the trends is to create what's called a kind of a house unit, a smaller grouping of residents in order of 10 to 15 units that would have their own more, let's call it sequestered place on the floor. Some of these houses are separated by physical doors and separations so that in the case of a pandemic, they can shut down certain areas or sequester certain parts of the floors. So that's become an important way to redesign the buildings, especially when they're multi-floor and on a corridor system. So there are techniques like that break down the scale. And the other side of it is to break down the central facilities like dining and to distribute them in more areas. So there isn't you're not compelled to go to one large dining facility. And what we're seeing now is that there's techniques for staging of different times for dining, as well as satellite dining. So in the case of memory care and assisted living, those residents would have their own smaller dining area, and that would cater to in the order of 20 to 25 residents at a time. So already from the start, we'd have three general areas, one for memory care, one for assisted living, and one for the general population. And the new trend is even for the general population is to offer food service on each of the floors. So this is a new trend that's emerged as a way to not force the mixing of people in a common area at the scale that it was even 5 years ago. These are trends that were in play even in Europe. 5 to 10 years ago, we did a junket trip to Denmark to see what they're doing, and they're moving very much in that direction of smaller clusters of what they call family units or grouping units, albeit even within sometimes larger buildings. In this case, we're looking at 140 units, and about 40 of those would be in the memory care or assisted living, and 100 would be more independent living. But even that group, we do something now that's called flex floors, which are floors that can convert to assisted living or memory care by virtue of proximities and changing divisions within the floor. But it's a sad recognition of the growth of these needs in the community and the lack of long-term care beds available.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And just one more question. So recognizing that you're looking at, instead of 0.75 for parking, taking it to 0.5, I'm just curious, so a total of 140 units. So what is the ratio, I guess, then of units then to stalls for visitor parking? So fully recognizing that folks over 85, that's your average, aren't necessarily going to have vehicles. Just curious about as far as visitation and parking, and you've got, whether it's birthdays or anniversaries or some function, Christmas, whatever it is, there's going to be an abundance of people coming to visit. So what's the visitor parking looking like?
Well, the experience we've had is that, we're showing 70 cars. So 140 units, we provide 70 cars. That's the ratio. We've seen it. We've never seen a problem at Christmas time. In fact, there's still an issue with seniors getting visitors in. So there's some seniors that are quite lonely at this time of life. And so we don't see that pressure that we normally would see in an apartment type of building. But we've even seen numbers less than 0.5 per unit in the ones that we've done in places like Oakville. Oakville, we use 0.33 cars per unit. And that's in an area that's not in a downtown in the case of the Chartwell home. So it's just the experience of that. Staff is a fairly known quantity. There's 3 shifts of staff, or 2 12-hour shifts, or 3 8-hour shifts. So they come and go at those periods, and the sizing of that is all known and dedicated for staff. So just the experience is that it's not an issue. It hasn't been an issue, even where car dependency is greater than in some communities. But this also speaks to the location. I mean, eventually, certainly the more independent seniors, they will have scooters, they will have mobility, they will be going to the plazas. And that's the advantage of this. They don't need to rely on the car as much as you would normally expect if you're in a more remote location. So it's just another factor in considering the parking demand ratio.
Great. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Spaziani. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm going to focus a little bit more on the apartment buildings with my question. We have a number of younger people in the community that require wheelchairs. They're living at home. They can't find apartments anywhere in our area. Will there be any consideration for accessibility apartments in the non-senior apartment buildings?
Yes, Mr. Counselor, yes, there will be. These homes, B and C, both are fully accessible buildings, number one. So they're elevator access. There are no two-story units in the building. So they're all able to be accessed by wheelchair. In addition to that, the Ontario Building Code requires that a minimum of 10% of the units be barrier-free in their interior design. And that's a variable that any owner can adjust to the demand of the marketplace. It's not that great a challenge to make the units more fully accessible, even the standard units. So those demographics, the idea of a younger buyer having options for accessibility as well as options for affordability, they have a market potential for those buildings as well. Certainly healthy seniors would be a target if you view the seniors theme as an important one for the market. But I believe you can't really limit your demography or your demographics to certain ages. I think you'd have to be able to admit younger people into these buildings, and they're meant to be independent buildings in that sense. So I believe they can function more as options for the wider audience in Font Hill and ones who need this type of accessible place to live.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Olson.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the presenters and the information they provided. Your narrative about aging reminds me of a commercial that was common in Scandinavia, where a baby was fired out of a cannon, crying, reached the apogee of its flight, and came back down and became older and older, and eventually landed screaming in a grave. So I guess instead of landing in a grave, you land in East Font Hill by the liquor store, I guess. So, yeah, that's a real commentary on life. But we pay a lot of attention to things here like senior accessibility and the paths and things. And one of the things I noticed is they're looking for snow clearing and ice removal. And I suppose that it can come to us to provide snow plows and that type of thing. But is there any thought to heating the walkways or anything so that they can be kept clear of snow and ice for safety reasons?
This is a growing area. Fram Slocker recently built a home import credit, one that I had a hand in terms of urban design. And there they use geothermal heating and cooling. And because of that, they're able to take heat from that system and melt the snow on their parking ramp, their underground garage ramp. And they may have, and I'm not sure if they've done this, I believe they have, they've used that they've used the geothermal source to melt snow on walkways. So these are important benefits. And this group is committed to that type of heating and cooling. So if they go down that path here, which I imagine they would, it's up to them to decide on that, obviously. But their most recent building has done it, and we've seen many examples of that lately where you can achieve that relatively for free. It's that energy is available through the geothermal systems.
Councillor?
Thank you. Yes, another question for you, Mr. Mayor, is the gardens that you show there. Would there be any consideration given to pollinator gardens or any kind of native trees and those type of things when it comes to developing your landscaping plan? Because we've got a horticultural history here that and an ethos that I think should be respected.
I would.
And the other one was permeable surfaces like permeable asphalt, permeable concrete, and that type of thing.
Yeah, I'll start with the gardens, because that is a growing theme. Certainly, gardens that represent the heritage of the district. There are ways to get native species for sure, but there are also, there's ways to do certain types of gardens that attract monarch butterflies. That there are certain ones that attract certain types of honeybees. Because food is such a central passion for these homes, there could be you may have heard of some of these places that have rooftop apiaries for the bee and honey collection. So there are ideas like that that can be brought into play, and certainly in the garden areas. In terms of other environmental initiatives like permeable paving and stormwater retention, but done with a purpose. You retain water and you cleanse it, and there's a role of plants as well that can function in that drainage kind of strategy in the gardens. So the water filters through it, it's released at a more gradual state. So these are just some of the ideas that we can explore with through the site plan process. And these are being done in homes throughout Ontario. Excuse me.
Councillor?
And through you, Mr. Mayor, would you be able to think about charging stations for electric vehicles? Or that's a coming thing within probably in the next 10 years would be something in demand. And if when you're building something, that's the time to think about these things.
It's a known growth area. We've been putting them into the underground garages where we have underground garages. In this case, there would be convenience outlets probably right near the entranceway. That would be where they plug into the building in areas just near the entrance.
Okay.
There's also green roofs that we can explore. These are other possibilities for enjoying other outdoor areas of the building if necessary. That's where some of the apiaries and some of the market gardening is happening on roofs. So that's another whole thing because of the food production side of it. It could become quite an interesting theme for the home.
Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a great project. I love the location and what you're doing to connect with the businesses and the crosswalks going across the highway there, Highway 20, and connections to the MCC, close to the library, because a lot of people walk to the library. And I think it'd be a great thing, and your ideas strike me as setting a new standard for this type of development. So thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments from any other councillors? Not seeing any. I shall turn to the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does bring us to the presentation of resolutions. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart that committee receive report 2021-204 for information as it pertains to file numbers 26T19-03-2020, OP-AM-03-2021, and AM-12-2020, and that committee directs planning staff to prepare the recommendation report on this topic for Council's consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, any other further discussion on the presentations we heard today? Not seeing any, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Thank you. I will begin the vote with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That carries.
And I'd like to again thank the presenters for their presentations tonight. It was very thorough And as Councillor Olson has stated, we look forward to the continuation of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have a motion put forward by Councillor Wink that committee receive the applicant's presentation for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Any further discussion? Not seen any. Deputy Clerk?
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Duncan.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. Through Mr. Mayor, we did not receive any written or verbal correspondence for this application, and therefore that does bring us to item number 5 on the agenda. And I will just notify Councillor Kaur that he may return to the meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I do see that Councillor Kaur has rejoined the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
That being said, I will read the notice requirements into the record. Town of Pelham application for draft plan of subdivision 1114 Hay Street, Emerald Trail, file number 26T 19-01-2021. A draft plan of subdivision to permit the development of the property for 7 single detached residential lots, 2 blocks for 16 rear lane townhouse dwellings, and associated public street parking. Associated public street. The Planning Act requires under Section 51 that council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the proposed draft plan of subdivision. This public meeting has been called to satisfy this requirement. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on November 18, 2021. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed draft plan of subdivision. In addition to providing information, we will also receive any comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the clerk in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is available on the town's website and will be displayed on the last slide of staff's presentation to follow shortly. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Town of Pelham to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Pelham before the decision is made, the person or body is not entitled to appeal the decision. In closing, we stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed draft plan of subdivision, and therefore any comments received will be considered by council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would kindly ask Senior Planner Shannon Larocque to begin her presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Larocque, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This public meeting is for an application for draft plan of subdivision for 1114 Hay Street. This development is to be known as Emerald Trail. The property is, of course, located on the west side of Hay Street, north of Welland Road, east of Rhodes Court, and south of the Town Old Park, Harold Black Park. Many people know this property because it was the location of the former arena. This application for draft plan of subdivision proposes 7 single detached residential lots, as well as 2 blocks for 16 street townhouse dwellings. The draft plan of subdivision would also create the associated roadway, which will be known as, which is known right now as Street A. This is the proposed draft plan. You can see Street A is a looping road with both entry and exit from entry from Hay Street and exit onto Hay Street. Blocks 8 and 9 are, of course, for the townhouse dwellings, and lots 1 through 7 are for the proposed single detached lots. We'll just go back to this one for a second here. I just also wanted to note at this point that the preferred plan that was endorsed by council a number of years ago for this property had actually contemplated 13 single detached dwellings and 28 townhouse dwellings. So the development that we're looking at right now has been reduced from what that concept showed. And in terms of the planning framework for this property is also located within a settlement area in accordance with the provincial policy statement. And so it is an area where development is to be directed. And the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe considers the property to be within the delineated built-up area. And the delineated built-up area is where half of all new development is to take place. The region's official plan also has the property as being within the urban area boundary and the delineated built-up area. This allows for a full range of residential, commercial, and industrial uses, as long as services and infrastructure are available and suitable. There are policies in the region's official plan that promote higher density development and growth that help to achieve a range of employment and housing types. And the region's plan also sets a 15% intensification rate for new development in the town of Pelham. The town's official plan has designated this property as 1120 Hay Street Special Policy Area. This amendment was approved in, I believe, 2017, and the purpose was to implement the recommendations that were made by the town's consultant at that time to direct how the development of this property would take place. This area is subject to the policies in B1113 of the official plan, and those include urban design requirements for the built form that ensure high quality construction and design. These policies also include requirements for the parkland and public space, such as street trees and lighting, sidewalks, maintenance of the wooded area, and a future pedestrian trail to connect to Welland Road. There's also a policy that requires the provision for public parking areas and on-street parking. And the full policies have been included in the staff report for information if anyone wishes to have a read of the entire policies. The town zoning bylaw zones the property as RM1 to 83 and R2 to 84. The RM1 to 83 zone applies to the proposed townhouse dwellings, and that zone permits block townhouse dwellings, street townhouse dwellings, home occupations, an accessory dwelling unit or home occupation located within a garage. And there are special regulations that go with the RM1 to 83 zone. The R2 to 84 zone applies to the proposed single detached lots, and this zone permits single detached dwellings, uses, buildings, and structures accessory thereto, and home occupations. And again, these were also subject to special regulations to facilitate the future development on this property. This application was circulated to commenting agencies and town departments, as well as area residents. The region has advised that they have no objection to this application from a regional or provincial perspective, subject to draft plan conditions that they have requested and the satisfaction of any local requirements. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority has advised that any work within 15 meters of the watercourse will require an NPCA work permit and, of course, their review and approval through that process. They've also advised that there would be the requirement for plantings within the 15-meter buffer of that watercourse. And these comments mainly pertain to the future addition of that walking trail that would connect to Welland Road. Bell Canada, Canada Post, and Enbridge have requested standard conditions of approval. Hydro One has advised that they have no comments or concerns. And Town Public Works has provided technical comments about the preliminary functional servicing report and plans. One written comment was received from a resident, Helen Bates, requested some information. And that information was regarding the future dwellings, about the proposed drainage plan, about where fencing would take place, and the existing westerly ditch that's located behind lot 1 and 2. A number of technical reports were provided with this application. Those include a planning justification report, a functional servicing brief, a stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessment, phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment reports, and also a remedial activities and confirmatory sampling report. And digital copies of these reports are available by contacting me if anyone wishes to read these reports. Again, no decisions are being made tonight. No recommendations are being made. We're here to hear from council and the public and provide information. And following the meeting, town staff will review the comments and the information and prepare a recommendation report for council's decision at a later date. If anyone wishes to receive future notices on this application, has any questions or comments, or would like copies of those reports, please contact me at extension 319 at the town or by email slarock@pelham.ca.
Okay, thank you for that report. Ms. LaRock, we turn to the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I do understand that Ms. Smythe and Mr. Terrace have a brief presentation as well. I'd ask Ms. Wilford to please share their presentation.
Okay, so you have the floor.
Ms. Smythe and Mr. Terrace, you're welcome to unmute yourselves and begin your presentation.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and those members of the public attending this evening. Thank you for taking the time to join us and receiving information about this application for draft plan of subdivision approval. My name is Susan Smythe. I'm a senior planner with Cortec Group. I am also here joined with Greg Tapas, who is a senior planner with UEM. We both have been retained to assist the developer, Mr. John Lally from Lally Homes, to facilitate these applications for the planning approvals for the development of the subdivision. I will keep this presentation short, considering Mrs. LaRock has provided a good summary of the proposal. If we could just please go to slide 2. So as noted, the site has frontage off Hay Street, and this will form as the main access entering into the development off of Street A, where the name will be determined at a later date, particularly for the final approvals. The site is approximately 1.59 hectares in size, and this is sufficiently large enough to accommodate the proposed 7 detached dwelling units and the 16 street townhouses. Lally Homes has designed the subdivision, which is, as noted by Ms. LaRock, less intense and dense than the originally envisioned development that was recommended in 2018. The recommendation by the town was to provide for the 38 dwelling units, that being 13 detached, as well as 28 townhouses. The difference is this proposal is 15 less units on the site. The main reasons for the reduction in the number of units is primarily to provide for better drainage, larger unit sizes that are compatible with the adjoining area, the neighborhood, better parking, and more landscaping opportunities. The site is surrounded by a mix of detached 1- and 2-story dwellings, as well as townhouse dwelling units. The proposed subdivision is proposing bungalow styles, and it fits right in and compatible with the existing housing stock. Can we go to the second? Sorry, thank you. This slide here highlights the area in yellow, which is owned by the developer and is referenced as Part 4 of the overall draft plan. Parts 1, 2, and 3 are the single detached lots that front Hay Street, and they are currently under construction right now. And Part 5 is the area that is owned by the town, which includes the park, trail, the paddleball court, as well as those parking areas to facilitate those public uses. Next slide, please. This here just shows the development, and it highlights different shading. The gray shade, the lighter gray shade, is delineating the roadway. And the darker shaded areas are outlining the extent of the units as well as the garages. In this circumstance, the proposal adheres to both the official plan designation for these types of housing, as well as the site-specific zoning regulations, that being the R1282 and the RM1283 for both singles and townhouse units. So therefore, this subdivision is not requesting any changes to what's permitted under the current zoning. This picture does not accurately or clearly show the positioning of the units, but just to note that units 17 to 23, again, being bungalow style, approximately 15,000 square feet, will have their front entrances facing the park, and the garages and driveways will be coming from the laneway. The units 8 to 16, again, is the street townhouses, a bungalow style type of unit, again, approximately about 1,500 square feet. They will have their front entrances off the public road, but their garages will be off of the laneway. And the 7 detached dwellings, approximately about 2,000 square feet in size, will have frontages off of that public road. Next slide, please. As previously mentioned, this development is less intense, and it's offering opportunity for more green space, to plant more trees and landscaping. The development will also utilize low impact design concepts, and this will help with the stormwater infiltration of the site. The developer will also offer the option for EV charging facilities in the units. And this offer is to promote for those hybrid type of vehicles and reduction of emissions. The units will be designed and will be using high quality building materials that is consistent with the town's urban design standards, and also complementary to the existing housing in that neighborhood. Next slide, please. As noted by Mrs. LaRocque, the proposed subdivision is consistent and does conform to both to all the provincial, regional, and local policies for that in consideration of residential intensification, primarily because it's located within the urban built boundary limits. It has access to municipal services, and this is providing an excellent opportunity to redevelop the land. We have reviewed and addressed the initial comments from commenting agency, that being from the Niagara region and other agencies. And as noted, there are no major concerns or development. As noted, one public comment has been received, and I can offer some of the responses right now. One of the comments or questions being raised was, what was the square footage of the homes? So that being the single detached, and as I had indicated, they're approximately about 2,000 square feet in size. They have a frontage, a setback of 4.5 meters from the front of the residence to the roadway, and 6 meters from the garage to the roadway. The minimum setback from the back of the home, so the rear yard to the property line, will be 10 meters. The question, will the developer be replacing the chain link fence with a wooden fence? This is yet to be determined by the town staff. If required, will be a condition likely of the draft plan of subdivision approval. Another question was pertaining to drainage and flooding being a concern. And they were questioning about swales and the drainage and what will be the catchment for the water runoff from these homes. So yes, storm drainage will be installed along the rear of the lots 1 through to 7. It will include swales, catch basins, and a storm sewer, which will outlet to the same outlet that existed for the arena. Last question was concerning about the elevation and the grading of the properties to the west, the steep slope and the ditch. And what does the developer plan on doing with the grading? Again, this is referring to the lands in the watercourse between the west side of the developer's property and the rear of the residence on Rhodes Courts. And again, we understand that these lands are owned by the town and not for the responsibility of the developer, and believe that the town at some point will address that question separately. Next slide, please. In terms of the next steps, so following this meeting and subsequent to addressing any additional concerns or issues raised by any members of the public, council, or any agencies, there will be the recommendation report pending approval, and then the 20-day appeal period. And once all comments have been addressed and the conditions of the draft plan approval are satisfied, the subdivision agreement will be prepared, registered on title, at which point the building permits can be issued, and obviously the lots can be sold. So I thank you for listening, and I am available to answer any questions you may have, and also Greg Terrace as well.
Great. Thank you for that presentation. I will turn to the Deputy Clerk.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. That brings us to the public portion of the meeting. We do have a number of pre-registered speakers this evening. I would kindly ask Ms. Wilford to please bring on our first speaker, being Mr. Peter Millett. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do see that Mr. Millett is in the meeting. Mr. Millett, please feel free to unmute yourself and or turn on your camera.
Okay. You ready? Well, are you there?
Thank you. I have no comment this time. I was basically just listening in because I have a vested interest in the property.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Mrs. Kelly Citrigno. I would ask Ms. Wilford to please bring Ms. Citrigno into the meeting.
Is she there? Are you there?
I do see that you're in the meeting, Ms. Citrigno, and you may proceed with your comments.
Can you see me or hear me? I tried to unmute.
Well, we can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so thank you for such a good presentation. It did clear up a lot of anxiety and questions that I did have. I was in on the original planning years ago when it was done and spent multiple hours talking with planners and discussing issues. I think one of the main issues I had was that block number 9. I just wanted to know which way the townhomes were facing, and it looks like they're remaining the same. They will face the park and the garages will be in the back. So I was happy to hear that. I think one of the questions I had was, will there be dedicated parking space for the tennis courts beside them? Or I know we had talked about lots in the past. Will that be worked into the town area?
Who would like to answer that question?
Mr. Mayor, through you, I don't mind answering that
Oh,
question.
okay.
I
Please
do
go ahead.
notice on the screen that my name is coming up as Greg. There is a mix-up, I think, between us trying to log on to the meeting. So sorry about that mix-up.
Yes.
So in terms of the parking, sorry, Miss, are you referring to the parking that's dedicated to the paddle?
Yes.
Yes.
I was unsure the diagram. It is a little bit small and it didn't label everything. So is that square that's beside the red outline, is that dedicated parking space for the paddle tennis?
Yes, that is correct.
And how many spots is that, just out of curiosity?
That is a good question. I'd have to go back on the other site plan that I have that delineates the number of spaces. So I don't have that number with me right now, so I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I can definitely provide that information through to the senior planner.
Okay. We love our park and it is a busy park. I'm wondering if there will be in the little area, the arena part, will there be parking on those streets, or is that just a drive through to get to all the townhomes and homes?
Yes, so I was able just to get the information back to the parking. Sorry for the ball. It is approximately 20 spaces that will be dedicated. In terms of your question about the roadway, the roadway will function for two purposes. There will be the public road, Street A, if you will. That will have the public access that will come into the development, provide frontages to those single detached dwellings, number 1 through to 7, and again, townhouses from 8 to 16. However, there is that laneway that will serve as the function to the garages, to those units that face the park. So that will not have public access, and there will be signage to indicate that.
Okay, so that will be parking for those townhomes.
That is correct.
All right. And then another question I had, and I know it was brought up multiple times when we were doing the planning again, and you've some of it, the sewer, the drainage, and the infrastructure. There has been flooding in the past in the grass area that is where the park is. Meadowvale did experience a sewer backup years ago, and I know that Welland Avenue has had multiple sewer backups, just knowing people that have homes there. Will the drainage be improved at all?
So through this development, it is being reviewed from both from the town. So in order to get final approvals, engineering staff has to be satisfied with respect to the stormwater management design, and that has been taken into consideration.
Okay, excellent. Well, I thank you very much for clarifying a lot of points that were unclear from the diagram. And I look forward to seeing some more of what's going to become of this property and having it evolve. Thank you.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Is there not also, if I may ask the presenter the question, to the east of the townhouses or the townhouses, there's another block square there. Is that also parking for anyone using the park? Is that correct?
Yes, through to you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. That is additional parking.
And it looks about the size as of the, if it's drawn to scale, which I'm sure it is, it looks about the size of the paddle tennis court. So would it be about 20 spots in there also?
Yes, that is correct. So I'm just kind of getting some information as we're speaking. So we're looking at 20 spaces per side. So I believe in total it will be 40 in one parking lot and I believe about 40 in the other. Now I will confirm this again, and that information will be provided to Ms. LaRock as part of the recommendation report.
Great, thank you. Deputy Clerk, please.
Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is Thomas Murray, and I would Please ask Ms. Wilford to bring Thomas into the meeting.
Mr. Murray? There you are. Mr. Murray, can you hear us? There we go. Are you there, Mr. Murray?
Yes, my intention for attending this evening was just to get information. I don't have any comments at this time.
Oh, okay, very good. Thank you,
very
sir.
much.
Thank you. Deputy Clerk?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Our next speaker this evening is Jennifer Fretz Joseph, and I would ask Ms. Wilford to please bring her into the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there she is. Jennifer, are you there?
Yes, good evening. Can you see me and hear me?
We can see you and hear you. You have the floor.
Fantastic, thank you. And thank you so much for the presentations this evening. They were very informative, very clear, and I do appreciate that information. I reside at 21 Meadowvale, so my house backs on to this property. So as a neighbor to Mrs. Citrigno, again, back in 2018, we started the whole journey to kind of work through the proposed development in this area. So it's nice to see ongoing, progress on that front. So I just had a couple of questions, and I think most of them that I did submit were answered. But just looking, as my memory isn't as good as it once was, is there any possible way that we can get a comparison of the preferred charrette that we sort of agreed to or were engaged upon versus the proposed changes in this draft plan, just so we could see them, side by side? I'm not asking for that this evening, but, if there's a possible way to get that information, I think it would really help to clarify what we saw a couple of years ago versus what's being proposed today.
Let me pose that question to Ms. Luak. Jennifer, you're not
Certainly,
asking.
Mr. Mayor, we can provide that.
Yes, yeah. Jennifer, you're not asking for that tonight. You would just like to have them presented to you either in an email or what have you. I take it.
Yes, that's all I'm asking for. Yeah, doesn't need to be this evening, obviously. Yeah.
Excellent, Ms. Luak.
Certainly, we can provide that. Jennifer, I would direct you to the staff report that was prepared for tonight's meeting. It does include that original preferred plan for quick reference, but we can do something side by side and send it to you.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. So I think we had discussed, Mrs. Citrigno also raised the point regarding sewer capacity, and that had been sort of considered as part of the development, which I'm very glad to hear. Question for you. So as far as Street A and the laneways, I'm just looking at the proposed plan right now from an emergency services perspective, and maybe this gets picked up through your consultation with the region. Things like emergency services, so fire trucks, even infrastructure such as snow removal, garbage vehicles, this type of thing. Are these laneways designed to be able to handle this type of traffic?
Ms. Luak?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this development proposal has been circulated to the Niagara region for review regarding waste collection. It's also been circulated to our own public works to look at for snow removal and fire and emergency services to ensure that emergency access is provided. And no concerns or objections have been raised to the proposed size and width of the roadway at this point in time. Everything seems to be satisfactory.
Thank you. Back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you for that information. So just a follow-on point to that. So there would be no requirement for the town to acquire sort of specialized snow removal equipment or anything like that as it relates to servicing this new development?
Ms. LaRocque?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that concern has not been raised. I do see that we have the Director of Public Works and the Manager of Engineering on the meeting as well, so perhaps they can directly respond to that question.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Director of Public Works, Mr. Marr.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, we don't have any concerns at this time with respect to snow removal for that laneway.
Thank you.
We've got the ability to be able to do that.
Thank you. Back to you, Jennifer.
Great, thank you. And my last question, are there any, and this would probably be more to the development folks on the line, is there any sort of a similar area that, you know, has been designed with this footprint that you've done before that maybe we could take a look at somewhere in the region perhaps?
Sure, through to you, Mr. Mayor. A good example is right in Fawn Hill, Saffron Meadows. It's at the corner of Fort Robinson Road and Rice Road. That is a good example of what is being proposed for the townhouses in this location.
Okay, sorry, Rice Road and?
Fort Robinson Road?
Fort Robinson, okay, very good.
Meadows, yes.
Saffron Meadows, okay. Excellent, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I believe that is all of the questions I had for just now. So thank you very much.
Okay, Jennifer, thank you for joining us in this meeting. And we turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that has concluded our pre-registered speakers. Having said that, I will just check the clerks at pelham.ca email address to see if anyone has emailed while they've been live streaming. Mr. Mayor, it is 7:10 p.m. and we have received no emails, and therefore you may close the public portion of the meeting and move to committee input.
Okay, thank you. After the presentation, any councillor have comments or questions for the presenters? Councillor Kaur.
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor, to the senior planner. How many homes did we eliminate from the original proposal back 3-4 years ago, or 3 years ago?
Ms. LaRocque?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kaur. We have reduced the number by 6 single detached and 12 townhouse dwellings.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, so that means there's 18 less cars and less traffic going down Hay Street then because of this new development.
Ms. LaRocque?
I think you can make the assumption there will be less traffic. I don't know how much.
But we eliminated roughly, I worked out 18 residents, so each person has a car. So there's 18 less cars going down Hay Street.
That's probably a good assumption, Councillor. Any other questions? No. Any other councillors with comments or questions? Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you again for the presentation. Mine's a technical question with regards to stormwater management. We know that this area has flooding. We know that this area has had sewer issues as well. So from a technical standpoint, who's responsible for the stormwater management design for this subdivision?
Let's go to Director of Public Works, perhaps. Mr. Marr, would you handle that question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have the manager of engineering who spent some time on this file, so I'm going to defer to Derek.
Okay, and Mr. Young, comments?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We've been working with John Delally on coming up with better ways to manage the storm infrastructure. The runoff has been significantly reduced from what was there previously. The outlet is restricted, so we're trying to reduce the runoff going out through the existing outlet to minimize the impact on downstream, because we know there are issues further downstream. So we're looking at better ways to to recharge the groundwater, so that it doesn't all flow off the site. So it is being looked at with the owner of the development, John Delally, and his consultant.
Thank you. Councillor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So who is responsible for the stormwater pond or management design, and who's taking the engineering responsibility for it? Who's signing off on it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that will be the town. So, I mean, in essence, provided they don't exceed what was there previously, then there should be less of an issue downstream. But we're trying to reduce that significantly so that we recharge the groundwater and have less runoff going out through the outlet.
Is there a stormwater pond design for this area?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, there is no stormwater pond design for this area.
With regards to the technical design of the sewage leaving this property, have all the sewer lines attached to this been reviewed to ensure the capacity is there to handle this sewage properly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for the stormwater runoff, it's overland flow that goes out through a culvert to the rear. It goes under Welland Road and goes into the ditch at the back there, which heads south down towards the south of the town. There's a pond down the bottom there that receives the flow. There is a design in place currently that meets the town design guide and does reduce the amount of flow that's heading off the site. But we are working on better ways to, as I say, recharge the groundwater rather than having it all going off-site.
Are you implying that the stormwater runoff coming down through that ditch running behind the properties beside the Steve Bauer Trail has the capacity to handle that water?
Provided it doesn't exceed what was there previously. I'm assuming that's the question you're asking.
That's correct.
The runoff area from what was there when the arena was there to what there is now is significantly reduced.
Councillor?
So the runoff would be reduced therefore.
Councillor?
I hear what you're saying, but I can tell you when we get these rains that we've had recently, those drainage ditches, because I live right down through that area, the flow going under both Beckett and behind my home through those culverts is at capacity with what we have. So you're saying the flow is going to be reduced by this subdivision?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the flow we're hoping to be reduced to about 70% of what it was before. Basically, we don't have the big parking area that was there before. We are looking at ways of, as I said, recharging the groundwater. We're doing everything we can to mitigate future flooding problems. The issues we have is the outlet and the ditch that you are currently referring to was designed a number of years ago, and it was only designed to accommodate a 5-year storm. The issue we have now is the storms we're getting are not 5-year storms. These are 20, 30, 50, 75, 100-year storms. We would have to completely redesign the entire outlet all the way down to Beckett and beyond to accommodate a 100-year storm. That would be the town's responsibility as it is our infrastructure. If that is something council would like to consider, then council would need to instruct us to do so.
With regards to the sewage system, I'm not sure that I received an answer to the sewage flow to the existing sewage lines. I think the capacity is fairly limited heading out of that subdivision with the size of the lines we have. How is that being addressed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we sent the development, the previous development, which was a larger size, off to our consultant who does the sanitary modeling for us to check the capacity issues within our sanitary model. And there was sufficient capacity at the last design to accommodate the subdivision. And as this one has been reduced, there should be sufficient capacity in there to address that issue.
Thank you for your answers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments to the presenters? And I see Councillor Olson. And you're on mute, sir.
Had to happen to somebody, I guess. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the presentation. I I'm very interested in seeing the steps that have been taken for low impact development, and I do want to acknowledge and remember that Councillor Stewart has her concern about permeable surfaces and things, and I hope that can be considered in the future. I'm really pleased to see that you have the charging stations for the electric vehicles. That's the way of the future, and now's the time. The stormwater management, the soak-away ponds that you're proposing there, I think they're going to be a big feature. And to the presenters, I hope we can consider native trees, plants, and other things in the landscape design. Now, behind the townhouses facing the park, is there a walkway or something that goes across there, or like a sidewalk or anything that comes across the front of the townhouses to get to the parking and to the park? I'm thinking about the townhouse facing the park there.
Through to you, Mr. Mayor. I will ask Greg Terrace to address that comment, if you don't mind, Greg.
Sure, thank you, Susan. Yes, there is in the original design that the town had prepared a couple of years ago, there is a path that goes along the front of those townhouses facing the park. And we're working with the town to clarify whose path that is. But there is a path proposed along the front.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments on the presentation on this development? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk or Madam Deputy Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does bring us to the presentation of resolutions. I have a motion put forward by Councillor Wink that committee receive report 2021-203 for information as it pertains to file numbers 26T19-01-2021, and that committee directs planning staff to prepare the recommendation report on this topic for council's consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay. Once again, I turn to council for any other questions or comments. And not seeing any. Before we go any further, I would like to again thank the presenters for your presentation tonight. And as always, council looks forward to the continuation of this project. Thank you. Deputy Clerk.
Thank you. And for the vote, I will begin with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That carries. I have a motion put forward by Councillor Olson that committee receive the applicant's presentation for information. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Any discussion? Not seeing any, Madam Deputy.
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. I have a motion put forward by Councillor Stewart that committee receive the written correspondence as listed on the agenda, and that committee receive the verbal presentations made by the public listed on the agenda. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Any discussion on this? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to item 6, being adjournment. I have a motion put forward by Councillor Kaur that the special committee of the whole public meeting under the Planning Act be adjourned. to Mr. Mayor for discussion.
Yeah. Any discussion on adjournment? No, I don't see any, Deputy Clerk.
Thank you. For the vote, I will begin with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Mayor Duncan.
Yes.
Thank you, and that carries. Mr. Mayor, it is 7:24 p.m. and you may gavel out your meeting.
Okay. Good night and good evening, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.